most common thing that I hear from students who want to change the world, who want to fix the problems that plague our communities, is that they're convinced that they are just too young, too inexperienced to really make any sort of impact. And interestingly enough, some of the problems that we do have are impacting young people most of all. I personally see these injustices play out in the work that I do with unhoused youth across the world. And what I have learned from them is that when you are a young person experiencing homelessness, there are really only a few things that you can focus on. Where will I sleep tonight? Where is my next meal coming from? And how can I keep myself safe? Getting a higher education very quickly slips through the cracks. But I would actually argue that young people are the most qualified to address some of these issues because they're the ones experiencing the things on a daily basis. The reality is that there could be people in this room right now that aren't sure where they're going to sleep tonight. The good news is that there are also people in this room right now that are the leaders of tomorrow and will be making the decisions that shape our cities and our communities. Many of us have had to work multiple jobs and struggle to get access to quality education. Many of us are still struggling today to be able to access and afford that quality education. And when I mention that, I can't help but remember one of my very first jobs in high school that I took on to help pay for college. I didn't work retail or at a fast food place. I was a factory worker at a food canning facility. So what exactly is that? So when you walk into the grocery store and there's an aisle of canned vegetables. Well, I worked in the place that gets the vegetables from the farmers, sanitizes all the crops, and then puts them into cans and ships them off to the stores to then be sold. One summer, I was part of the team that was on the main receiving belt right outside of the factory. So the trucks would come in and dump all of their vegetables on the belt. Squash, pumpkin, green beans, beets. And our job was to remove anything from that belt for 8 hours a day that wasn't that specific vegetable. That could be twigs, barbed wire, dead snakes, live snakes, rats. It didn't matter what it was. You just had to make sure it didn't make it to the next station of belts. And if that wasn't enough, on the weekends, I ended up taking extra shifts by being part of the sanitation crew. So I would come in and I would put on this hazmat-like suit and crawl into the machines and wipe them down with this sort of high-grade bleach mixture. One of these weekends, I was doing exactly that. And I remember hearing the emergency alarm go off as well as screaming. It turns out that one of the sanitation workers hadn't properly turned off the belt. And while she stuck her hand in the belt to clean it, the belt took her arm right out of its socket. This employee turned out to be an undocumented immigrant, a mom, and she never filed any sort of complaint because she was too scared that something would end up happening to her or her children. She would lose her job and would no longer be able to afford where she lived. Even though this is an extreme case of what can happen and the lengths that people have to go to put food on the table, this story is really not that uncommon. In a country where the federal minimum wage hasn't changed from $7.25 since 2009, the cost of living keeps rising, rent is the highest it's ever been, and more people are experiencing homelessness, youth included. So we have to ask ourselves, how much more are we willing to take? What is the cost for our generation if we don't do anything? And who is going to pay that price? Similar arguments can be made for many other things: climate change, education reform, economic policy, but what can we really do? How do we even start? What I want you to know is that as you step into these leadership positions, you are capable of preventing the next generation from facing these same issues that you've had to overcome. There's a proverb that I love that says, "We do not inherit this planet from our ancestors, we borrow this planet from our children." And this generation wants to leave this planet in a much better position than how it was given to us. So I urge you in the room, when we finish here today, please don't let the end of your schooling be the end of your learning. When you go back to your communities, we must mobilize. Work with other young leaders in your school districts that care about the same issues you do to get together and create action items that you demand from your local policymakers and city council members to put in place. The truth is that Gen Z is the largest generation of young people to ever exist. And with those numbers comes power. You are a powerful generation of youth. And it has been a long road to get youth in any sort of leadership positions. And yes, it will be longer still before you're able to directly make the decisions that are going to change our communities. But we are on the precipice of change. However, the longer we wait, that gap of opportunity becomes wider and the gap of opportunity becomes steeper. So until we all reach that goal, our marathon continues.